again, want to welcome to the show Charles Thomas of the DukeCT Lounge. Gonna get into some actual, real sports talk now. We usually talk wrestling, but we're talking about the actual competitive stuff tonight all night.
Yes.
And,
Trust me, there are some good stuff here to talk about.
Yeah, definitely. And one thing I said, both of us, of course, are longtime listeners or viewers of Urinating Trees videos on YouTube, and guy who doesn't like to talk very fondly about the National Basketball Association, and of which I cannot really blame him. For me, there hasn't been that much good to watch since, about 2011, if I happen to remember what might have taken place that season.
Yes. But me, I have always watched and had fun watching the NBA. Most, even though the local team I had, Washington Wizards, formerly Washington Bullets, have gone up and down and all around. But I still enjoy the game and watching, even though there's still super teams around, which I think that some people have a frustrating part of that. But I think it's just that it's always been that way. That's what it is. There's always been super teams.
At least since the 1980s it has been. And believe it or not, it was actually the late founder and owner of the Mavericks, the late Donald Carter himself, who basically warned the league back in the 1980s that their imposing of a salary cap was going to lead to competitive imbalance. And he more or less ended up being proven right. And that's one problem that, the league still definitely has now, because I think without using as colorful language as Urinating Tree might say, I would say that until further notice, we assume that there's really no team that can really beat the Golden State Warriors in the long run of the full 82 games plus playoff season. On the other hand, that doesn't mean there aren't some positives in this early goings of this season. First and foremost being, it almost looks like we've gone all the way back to 1980s style of play in the league. Like, just for example, the Mavericks home opener this past Saturday, the Mavericks gave up 136 points and won.
That's nothing. You had the Washington Wizards basically for the past couple of games beginning to go 100 points. In fact, the recent game, their first victory, I believe, was it was an overtime, 125 to 124, and that's and then you have the Spurs and Lakers, which it's amazing how people will turn against you. And like after 3 games, LeBron misses a couple free throws and now people want him to run out of the arena. It's amazing 3 games can do.
It's the elitism of Lakers fans. That's what you have to deal with them. And probably the extreme expectations of a LeBron James, so to speak. But meanwhile, so far so good for the Mavericks. I think they're over 500 for the first time in 2 years. Still early to go on. But the main thing I wanted to talk about here was, for those of you who might not have heard, there was a new rule introduced with the NBA, and specifically how it relates to the G League, what's supposed to be the minor development league for the NBA. It's been around for probably close to approximately a decade now, and still has not really come to pass as being that full, at least being established as a full developmental league like, say, baseball or hockey have. But not even after they, and here's what they've done. Now, as we know, for about 10 to 12 years or so now, I really should have done more research to figure out exactly when it was, the league instituted this rule where you would have to be at the minimum age of 19 years old to enter the NBA draft. However, what few people might not know is that at least as far as I could tell from the beginning, 18-year-olds are eligible to play in the G League. Now, that hasn't led to a lot of top recruits out of high school opting to start professionally in the G League over college. But recently, this new rule change might turn a tide in that, because now the G League announced what they are calling select contracts as part of I'm reading the article off of NBA.com right now. The NBA G League announced a select contract as part of a comprehensive professional path that will be available beginning with the 2019-20 season to elite prospects who are eligible to play in the NBA G League but not yet eligible for the NBA. The contracts, which will include robust programmatic opportunities for development, are for elite players who are at least 18 years old and will pay $125,000 for the 5-month season. This is a pretty big and rather bold step, I would say, in trying to add incentive towards players possibly taking other professional options that are available to them that probably haven't been as publicly divulged, so to speak, for the most part. Obviously, we got a year to go before any of this before this will start, but what do you think the chances are that this might lead to some more top stars out of high school choosing a G League path over college now, if they have this opportunity of, at the very least, if you're a top star, to make a 6-figure salary in the NBA's minor league?
Honestly, I don't think it's gonna. It might stir a little bit, like say maybe a role player or two, but not the big star. Because one, college, you go say for example a year in college, and go to the NBA, and you can get a huge deal, a lot more money, and you can play in a somewhat kind of style like in the G League, but in a bigger audience, a bigger stage. And I know you might be sneered at, but you can get a quality education. But I know you're about to roll your eyes there.
Like my long time, one of my favorite radio guys, the since retired Randy Gallo, he said, I'm not exactly sure a lot of these athletes are going there for the book learning, as it were.
Yes, but
I will say this much. One guy who probably would agree with you on this level, I will say, is, of course, ESPN's Adrian Wojnarowski, who I'm reading off a screen cap of one of his posts on Twitter right now, when he said, I have doubts about how many top players will go this route. Some, yes, but G League is full of early connecting flights, long bus rides, small gyms. It isn't glamorous. Big-time NCAA ball still has the trappings of exposure, packed houses, private jets. Now, I'll say this. For me, it's going to be wait and see. Now, I am the guy who would hope that a top prospect out of high school would take this opportunity. Now, this is where, like I said, this is where I've gotten to a lot of very heated discussions with some of my other the few sports guys that will still actually pay any attention to me whatsoever. I burned a few bridges in that department over these last few years. Whole other different story that we're not going to get into there. But the few guys that actually still keep in touch with me, I've gotten in some pretty hot debates over this. I am one of those guys who remains believing that players should not be getting paid in college. My number one reason for that is ultimately you set up any payment system for athletes in college, the non-athlete student is going to have to end up funding that through higher tuition, higher student fees. One way or another, that's going to happen. So I'm just not in favor of that in any way, shape, or form. That having been said, I'm not so naive as to ignore the fact that the NCAA and especially the major, biggest colleges, not just in basketball, but in football as well, are making a ton of money off of these athletes. And perhaps with the argument that just a free ride scholarship might not be adequate compensation for that, especially when you take on some of the other expenses that students and even student athletes would still have to handle. I've always gone with the argument that the athletes should have other options to try and play professionally, and not have to take the college route. Like you have that option in baseball. You can sign a professional baseball contract at age 16, for those who might not be aware.
You look at the NHL. I mean, what did they draft?
17 years old. I believe the minimum age is 17 in the NHL as well. Both baseball and hockey have established minor league development systems where players coming out of the amateur ranks, they don't have a problem with starting up playing in small towns in front of small 4-figure or less crowds and learning to build up their way to the major league level. Now, granted, part of that is that, whether I want to admit it or not, at the college level, baseball and hockey aren't as big time as football and basketball. But the main thing I was trying to say here is maybe this is the case where not as many top stars out of high school will choose this new option.
They won't. Again, it's the college experience, and you might not like the stuff, but it's the pageant. It is emboldened in us, and it's such. Same as football.
Well, here's
college football and college basketball. Those are the two. And you have college football and college hockey. They're there, but again, it's not as prevalent. It is not as ingrained in the United States.
Well, here's what I would say to that is that if that is in fact the case, if the overwhelming majority of top blue chip recruit athletes are going to still choose college over this new option, that especially now more than ever, to play in the G League, if say nothing about playing overseas, if they're still going to choose college, then in my view, they forfeited all rights to complain about not getting actually paid in college. Because you have another option now. You basically have, do you want the choice of, do you want to be, go an option where you're going to be treated like a big man on campus for at least 1 year, play in front of huge crowds on national TV, or are you going to take the option where you can legally get a paid salary? You shouldn't have to automatically expect to get both. That's probably the one issue I've got with a lot of younger players and athletes today, is the idea that they deserve to get carte blanche right out of high school.
Well, let's be honest here. They've been getting carte blanche since they had shown promise and potential, like at middle school, if not earlier.
I'm right with you on that. You're talking about people that just about every top athlete in this country, probably by the 9th grade, it has people whispering in his ear that he's guaranteed to be the next LeBron or the next Kobe, and that's why I'm almost thinking that these players need to go somewhere like the G League and learn that, not everything is guaranteed and easy. You gotta learn to pay your dues and learn how tough being on the road in a professional league is. Like the term I was trying to think of, I wanted to say that eluded me just a few minutes ago is, I don't have a problem with any athlete at any level, any sport really, choosing to go professionally at the time that they wish. But what so many don't realize is, while more could potentially play professionally, not everyone is going to be ready to play at the major league level at 18 years old. And that's just what I think too many young athletes don't seem to get. at least as far as the football and basketball level, because like I said, they've had people talking in their ears that they're guaranteed to be the next LeBron for all this time.
Well, but that's the thing. It's just been their entire lives again pushed in that narrative. And with this thing, I hope some young kid, 18, 19-year-old young man and such goes to the G League if they want to be successful, get those nice contracts. But again, I just see again, college, and not only that, but some people really do. I know it's a rarity, but some actually do go to college the full ride, not just to better their game, to sharpen their skills, but also do want to get education. I know it's very rare, but it does happen. And again, we talked this on Twitter. It's just college is the community. You have family members of people from generations going to schools and such. And the G League, it will take maybe 1, 2, 3 generations of this thing, and it has to get just as big to have them go into the G League. And so, I mean, I guarantee you, it's a lot harder for baseball and hockey to have this transition too. So it has to take a generation or two to have this G League, to have this stuff. But also, I think funny enough, there's actually an option to go back to college too in the NHL. So I could be wrong there, but I think if you do that and have something like you can, if you have the G League and it seems a little too rough, you can go back, opting to go back to college.
Well, I think
that sort of thing.
Yeah, there is a difference there. There's a difference there because I think obviously I believe especially colleges in the NCAA would be more lenient for that sport in hockey because hockey's not a sport where they're guaranteed to be making money off of the athletes, and that's why I do think that I think you're going to see the NCAA and colleges fight this new this new effort by the NBA and its G League to try and recruit top prospects to choose G League out of college. Personally, I kind of, whether it's going to work or not, I do admire the NBA for trying this. This is probably a kind of a compromise situation they're trying to make, I'd say, with the Players Association to say, look, we still don't want 18-year-olds playing in the NBA because we just can't trust that they're mature enough yet, physically developed enough yet to really for it to be any good for them and good for the league as well. But we do want to make it more visible and more well known that they still have other options besides having to play in college, and as too many of them like to complain about, supposedly have to spend a year not getting paid while a college makes millions of dollars off of them. I do at least applaud the NBA for making this type of additional offer to young players. Whether or not the majority of young players are going to take the offer, we're just going to have to wait and see on that.